Hi there. If you clicked on this video, there's a very high likelihood that you are either brand new at developing and you want to learn how to become a developer, or you're just trying to learn how to become a front-end developer, trying to learn some of the concepts and everything like that. So in this video, I'm going to kind of talk about how myself was able to kind of learn front-end development in 30 days. And I'm definitely not a master at it at all, but I definitely have a firm grasp and understanding to be able to create web applications by myself and make them look pretty good. But in this video, I'm just going to kind of go over what were some of the tips and tricks that I kind of used to kind of help me grasp the concept of front-end development relatively quickly. If you would be interested in that, stay tuned to the end of the video and leave a like, subscribe, and yeah, let's just go ahead and hop into it. So a little bit about me. For the last 2 months, I've been learning how to become a software developer. I've been practicing a lot of code. I've been doing a lot of projects. I've been doing pretty much everything you can think of to just kind of learn how to code. And the reason why I'm making this video is not to be a guru or anything like that. It's just simply I want to be a little bit of a guide. I know that there's people who are wanting to get into development as well and who don't really know where to start. I'm just giving you where I started in my roadmap. And if you kind of want to do the same thing as me, then I would suggest kind of taking my roadmap and, seeing how it works for you. So let's first kind of jump into what were the main things that I kind of really needed in order to get started in learning front-end development. So the first one I think you really need is just a really strong why. And what I mean by that is you need a really strong reason to code, because if you have a really strong why, it's going to help get you through some of the hardships in coding. Coding by far is not easy, and being brand new to it is also kind of daunting and is a little bit of a challenge, but you need a strong why that kind of helps you push through that challenge as well too. So my main reason for coding wasn't to get a job, nor was it to, just be a good coder and have it added to my resume. I really wanted to pick up a creative skill. I wanted to be able to create things and solve some of my problems through my creations as well. And you can kind of see this if you look back at my previous video. I created a whole futures calculator that was so simple for me to understand that I'm using while taking a challenge with Apex funding right now. So that's my why for why I wanted to learn coding. It's just simply because I wanted to be able to create some of the solutions for some of the problems that I have in life. And I just really wanted to just have a creative skill. So the second thing that I think is very useful to have is to enjoy problem solving. So what I mean by this is there's going to be, like, as a coder, you're going to be doing a lot of problem solving, and you have to kind of enjoy this almost. It has to be something that you kind of not look forward to, but you don't mind doing. I think that was one of the biggest things that I had an advantage with is because I love problem solving. I love finding solutions to problems. And every time I code, I'm always getting that dopamine rush of solving a problem. Just recently, this morning of the day of this recording this video, I finally figured out how to integrate Stripe through my web application and then create a Stripe checkout. And it was just a rush of enjoyment. I was in a winning trade, and I wasn't even worried about the trade. I was more worried about and more excited about figuring out this problem that I've been dealing with for the last 2 days. So that's another thing I say is very helpful to have. Just being okay with, problem solving and actually maybe getting a little bit of dopamine from problem solving. That's another thing that if you do have is very beneficial. If not, it's okay. Problem solving and gaining the love for problem solving is something that you can add on. It's not something that comes with you when you're born. And third, I think the biggest thing that a lot of people think that you need to be in order to start coding is being good at math or being really smart. I don't think it's neither of those. I think you need to have some type of capabilities of problem solving and knowing how to solve problems. I think that's very important. You don't need to be smart. You don't need to be a mathematician, but I would say you do need to have a really, almost a love for problem solving. So let's start with the roadmap. If you see me kind of looking down on this paper, it's just because I have my script kind of printed out here. I kind of want to keep a steady direction throughout this video. So first thing, learn HTML and CSS. So if you don't know what that is, HTML is essentially the web structure, or basically the structure of every website you see on the page. And then CSS is essentially the styling of it. So I really like to look at it like this. Every web application is just basically broken down into two things. If you look at it and you correlate it to a human body, let's look at HTML as the skeletons and CSS as the skin. The skeletons is what is the core foundation and the frameworks that the website is relying on to hold itself up. The CSS is the skin. It's the style. It's what makes the website beautiful and nice to look at. So I would say definitely start off with HTML and CSS. Then the second, you go down to either programming language. So there's a lot of programming language out there. I'm just going over my roadmap. I chose to go JavaScript. Now, I would say definitely look into what you want to do. If you want to create maybe more like maybe something else like video games or something like that, look into other programming languages. I just chose JavaScript because I really wanted to create web applications, and that's kind of the easiest one and the most common one that I've seen so far when I was looking on YouTube. So my roadmap was HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then I chose a framework or a little bit of a front-end framework of my own. So there's a lot of them. There's React, there's Angular, there's Vue. I just simply chose React because React was the most popular one, and I simply think if it's the most popular one, it's the easiest to understand because a lot of people are going to be uploading videos and tutorials, and it's a lot of interface, or there's a lot of people using it. So when I have a problem, I'll easily be able to find the solution for it. So that was my roadmap: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then React. Now, how it kind of was structured in a time frame basis is week 1, I was focused on HTML and CSS. We're going to get into resources that helped in a minute, but when I was studying HTML and CSS, I was using a lot of W3 Schools. It's essentially just a website that just kind of allows you to learn HTML and CSS and how to kind of react with it. And also kind of teaches you by having you do exercises, so you actually get to learn what it is and actually exercise it and use it and see how certain things may react. Then on week 2 and week 3, I was mainly focusing on JavaScript. And this was the second and third week. JavaScript is definitely the hardest out of the whole bunch. And I only say that because it is a lot. There's a lot of things that you need to know with JavaScript. So I really took my time. I was using a lot of Free Code Camp, and I was using a lot of YouTube tutorials. Look for a lot of YouTube videos that not only taught me what each thing is doing, but it also had like a little exercise that I could follow along too. That was very helpful as well too. And then week 4, the last week, was spending most of the majority of my time learning React and how to kind of use it. React is pretty simple. If you learn JavaScript, you pretty much learn React at the same time. So you're basically killing 2 birds with 1 stone. That was my framework. So week 1, HTML, CSS, week 2, week 3, JavaScript, and then week 4 was mainly studying React. So really quickly, let's get into 3 resources that helped a lot and how you use it. 1, obviously YouTube Academy, YouTube University, whatever you want to call it. YouTube is a great way to learn. There's a lot of tutorials on pretty much everything that you want to learn when it comes to coding. All you have to do is just kind of sit down and just click one of them and just sit down for a good 90 minutes, just kind of watching. I would suggest when you watch these tutorials, when you watch these playlists, when you watch these courses on YouTube, do not pick the ones that have heavy 3-4 hours ones. Pick the ones that are very short. Essentially, my reason is if you can simplify a concept, you essentially know it. And it was very true for me as well too. I would go on little YouTube videos that would talk about one concept for 11 minutes, and it taught me more than the videos that talked about the same concept for 30. It's because simply they understood it better and it was able to simplify things, so you kind of get the idea a little bit easier. Second, ChatGPT and Google. Whenever you have a question on anything about coding, there's always an answer, whether it's in ChatGPT or whether it's Google. Someone's always dealt with the problem that you're currently dealing with, and they found an easier explanation of a concept that you're trying to understand, or they found a code that works. Basically, essentially, ChatGPT and Google were my main drivers. I would Google the questions that I just simply did not know the answer to a lot. And sometimes I would even ask ChatGPT to break it down to me as an absolute beginner. And this helped a lot. Didn't help as much as YouTube, but it's definitely a second resource that can be very helpful while you're learning. And 3, I would say, is W3 Schools and CodePen. These were the 2 that I was kind of using. So you can use your own code editor, but majority of the time, if you're just starting, I'd recommend CodePen. It'll have everything kind of set up for you, and you'll still get to practice and exercise. And when you're ready to go to a real thing, you can always, transfer everything that you learned from CodePen over to the real thing. But W3 Schools was very helpful, and I say that because it had the explanations to all the concepts that I was trying to understand, and also it had little sections where I could practice these ones as well too. So I would just simply recommend W3 Schools and CodePen. Those were the 3 main resources that I was kind of using on my roadmap. All right, so last part of the videos, my personal tips, my personal do's and don'ts. Right now I have 3 do's and just 1 big don't. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. First, do a lot of projects and follow along yourself. So when you do tutorials on YouTube, try your best to follow along with them. Pause the video and try to understand what exactly that they're doing. Try your best to find tutorials that the coder or whoever is doing the programming is explaining everything that he's doing slowly and easy to understand, because that is going to help your growth a lot. One of the biggest things that kind of gets talked about in coding or in the developer space is something called tutorial help, where you simply can't do anything without a tutorial. And that is very true. So my biggest thing on how to avoid it was I simply just tried my best to follow along, and I tried to understand every concept. So when they made a certain function, I was trying to understand, what does that function do? If you can understand what every piece of code that they're writing does, or you can try to understand, you will avoid that syndrome of not being able to do anything without a tutorial. Second do is look for videos that explain and show. So what I mean is, whenever you're trying to learn a certain JavaScript function, try your best to find YouTube videos. There's a lot of them, but find YouTube videos that explain the concept well and actually go over an example or an exercise that you can follow along as well. This is very helpful because it will help your understanding of what the concept is, what the function is, and then also it gives you something where you can internalize that function by practicing as well too. Third do is just simply block out time every day to simply learn about coding. I would say block out around 3 hours a day to intentionally learn. And what I mean by this is, every day, if you can, try and write down what you're trying to learn. What are you trying to learn? So example, every day when I was back in Canada, when I was trying to learn, I would just simply, when I wake up, I would block out a certain time that I know I'm going to be studying for 3 hours, giving my undivided attention on learning whatever certain concept. So if at the time it was array methods, I'd write down, today I'm going to spend at least 3 hours trying to learn array methods. And then once I have a grasp, good understanding, then I'll move on to the next thing. But just try your best to block out time where you won't be distracted, where, nobody's going to come and knock on your door or anything like that. And you can just simply spend all of your focus and mental energy focusing on what you're trying to learn. And also write down either the night before or the morning of what you're trying to learn, because it helps a lot more when you're intentionally learning rather than just learning for the sake of. Lastly, the big do nots. I think this one is probably the most important one, and this is a great way to end the video. Do not learn to memorize, learn to understand. So when you're learning, do not try to memorize every code, because when it gets time to actually use these things, you're not going to be able to remember it. It's a whole bunch of code that you have to try and memorize, and it's just pointless when you could just search it up. Try to learn to understand. What does that mean? So for example, if you are brand new, the first thing you're probably gonna learn is a variable. Try and learn to understand what a variable is. So instead of learning the syntax for a variable, for example, let data equal 1, or try and understand what does that mean. So essentially, what does it mean is that number is going to be equal to 1. And essentially all a variable is just a box that's holding some type of string, data, Boolean, all of these type of different things. That's an example of learning to understand, because you understand what the function is doing. So you don't need to memorize it. You just need to type in what you're trying to do. So for example, let's say you're trying to add 2 numbers together. You may not remember the syntax, but you know what you're trying to do. So all you have to do is search, how do I add 2 numbers together? And what is the function for it? What is the name? It's very key that you learn to understand, because once you understand, you're able to internalize it a lot easier and a lot better. And then if you ever forget something, you can just search up, because you know what you're looking for. That's the key thing. When you learn to understand, you are not clueless anymore. You're not just memorizing the syntax, not knowing what it's doing. No, you know what it does. So even if you forget the name, you can search up and easily find it. So that's my big don't, and that's the big thing that I want to kind of end this video on. I hope this kind of helped someone who's kind of brand new. 2 months ago, I didn't have a clue about what a syntax, JavaScript, or even HTML was. And now I am just in a little bit of a better position than I was 2 months ago. So I just kind of wanted to share my learnings with someone who may be in that position that I was 2 months ago as well. If you enjoyed this video, it'd be very nice if you could leave a like, you could drop a comment for some feedback, and then also you can subscribe as well too. Thank you so much for watching this video. And until next time, ladies and gents, have a wonderful afternoon.